Welcome back to MotionPic Recap. Today we're going to recap the comedy and romance movie titled, Mr. Deeds. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. An old man called Preston Blake says he's always dreamed of reaching the top. People tell him, however, that the storm is getting worse and they have to get down now. He says never in 1,000 years, and continues without them. The next day, national news remark they've lost a visionary, and now the whole country wonders who's gonna inherit Blake's 49% voting shares in his company worth $40 billion. Somewhere, a man called Chuck asks people if they've found an heir yet. Another man called Cecil says his men are searching, and they should get a fax. Suddenly, a fax comes, saying the heir is Longfellow Deeds. Next, Chuck remarks it all looks so green. They land and walk up to a man, asking if he knows Longfellow Deeds. He says he'll take him straight to him. They get to a store, and a woman tells them Deeds will be back from his pizza delivery round soon. Not long after, Mr. Deeds appears, who gives them both a big hug. They then ask if the name Preston Blake means something to him. He remarks his mother knew someone called Blake, and they tell him it's his uncle, who has died. They say his uncle left him a $40 billion inheritance, and Deeds doesn't seem to care. He reads one of his poetic cards, something he loves to create in his free time. Later, they tell him he'll never have to deliver pizza anymore, but Deeds doesn't really listen, delivering pizza, and helps people he sees on the street. They say he needs to come and write some papers in New York, to sell his inherited stock to them for $40 billion, and Deeds say he guesses he can come, remarking he'll be the first to leave this place in a long time. Next, people from the whole city are waving him goodbye. They make a stop on their way to eat some Wendy's, before they continue. In New York, a TV reporter called Mac is told by a man called Marty how the company has flown to bring Blake's heir, and Mac says he's going on the air in 2 hours, and tells a man called Jim and a woman called Babe to get the heir's life story by then. Later, Babe asks Marty for help, saying she really needs this story. As Deeds starts talking to the pilots, Chuck tells Cecil this guy is perfect, that it's basically guaranteed this moron will practically hand them the company. Suddenly, Deeds starts singing Space Oddity by David Bowie, and the pilots join in on the singing, and then suddenly Cecil joins too. Chuck angrily yells at them to stop, and Deeds calls him a party pooper. They arrive at the company tower, and Cecil tells him he's now the most eligible bachelor in New York, but Deeds says he doesn't want to meet a girl just because he's rich, telling a story how his father saved his mother as she fell through the ice figure skating, saying he'd like to meet a girl kind of the same way. Behind them stands Marty. As they get in, Deeds' servant Emilio surprises him, sneaking up on him. Deeds says he doesn't want a servant, but being his friend he'd like. He hugs the elevator operator, asking how he's doing, getting the answer it has its ups and downs. Getting to his apartment on a lower floor, Deeds is surprised Emilio is already there, and Emilio explains he himself is very sneaky. Next day, he wakes up in his new apartment. Testing a Hawaiian punch drinking fountain, Emilio sneaks up on Deeds again, and Emilio remarks he's underestimating his sneakiness. Meanwhile, Chuck tells people they can't tell anyone about this until he's acquired all the shares. Deeds appear, asking if there's anything he can do today. Chuck says there's nothing. He explains to Deeds that he as an owner doesn't have to do anything, that he should let officers do everything. Suddenly a man storms into the room, swearing and behaving badly. Deeds tells him to stop swearing as there are ladies present, but he ignores Deeds, and Deeds hits him. He helps him up, and asks what the problem is. The man says he figured that if he played football well, he could renegotiate and get more money. Deeds asks if they could renegotiate and pay him less if he played bad, to which he replies no, repeating he wants more money. Deeds remarks that don't seem fair, and that they'll have to fire him then. Chuck gets upset as he's their best player, but Deeds says he'll be back. That evening, Marty has told Babe about Deeds' dream of saving a damsel in distress, and they're preparing to trick Deeds. Suddenly Deeds appear, and they act as if Marty is mugging her, and Deeds runs up, catching up to him, starting to hit him, kick him, and hit him some more, before running back to Babe with her bag. She pretends to be dizzy and confused, and Deeds offers her to walk it off. They introduce each other, walking down the street, and Babe explains she's a school nurse. Deeds finds that lovely, finding her kind, and asks her if she'd like to have dinner with him. Deeds tells her his life story and how he's delivering pizza and writing poetic cards. A waiter appears, and Deeds says he saw this couple having their anniversary, asking if he could give them these $20,000 as a gift, but not tell them it was from them. Next, a Mr. Simons invites Deeds to their table, and Deeds hugs them all. Curious, they ask a bit about him, and Babe reveals Deeds makes nice poetic cards. They ask him to share one, and Deeds recounts one he's done for Mother's Day. The poem is a bit goofy, and the people start to laugh, all except Babe. Deeds tells them that people in his hometown would definitely find them funny too, but wouldn't laugh since that wouldn't be good manners, saying they better go. Continuing to laugh, he remarks if Babe wasn't there, he'd probably knock their heads in. She says she doesn't mind, and the people immediately regret their bad behavior. Babe goes to the ladies' room, taking out a camera, remarking she wants a raise. Next morning, Emilio surprises Deeds again. Deeds asks how he got in these pajamas, and Emilio tells him he changed him, saying he was very gentle. Chuck appears, showing Deeds he's on TV, how he behaved recklessly last night. Chuck tells him this creates a bad company image. Deeds hugs him, saying it's his bad. Emilio says he'll call his limousine since they're going to Blake's funeral today. While Deeds goes to get his suit, Chuck tells Emilio that as soon as the moron Mr. Deeds sells his stock, he's out of here on his fat Puerto Rican ass. Emilio sneaks up, saying he hails from Spain. Later in the church, a man holding a speech about Blake is rhyming, and Deeds says this man can make a fortune with poetic cards. Lastly, Deeds shares a poem he wrote, which some think is somewhat childish, and some think is good. Meanwhile, Babe talks to her boss, and she remarks she's meeting him again today at 4 p.m. Later, Emilio remarks he liked his speech at the funeral. Deeds asks Emilio to tell him a bit about his uncle, and Emilio starts telling him stories, how Blake was like a father to him, having worked for 30 years. Emilio shares he never knew his father, and his mother died giving birth to him. He tells Deeds he better let him finish breakfast, and suddenly he has disappeared. Later, the football player calls, saying he's sorry and likes to agree to his terms, and his father thanks Deeds for teaching his son a lesson. On his way out, he tries sliding the staircase, but crash lands. He surprised finds his great-uncle's personal journal hidden in the now destroyed table. Next, he's paid two guys $20,000 each for their bikes, and he and Babe have a nice evening together, and Deeds shares a story from his uncle's journal how he as a child dreamed of becoming a DJ, which he thought was funny. Suddenly, they hear there's a fire, and they run to help. Deeds shakes a firefighter's hand, saying he's a volunteer fire chief in his town and says he'll help them. He climbs up, seeing a woman who refuses to come down before she's found all her kitties. Deeds asks how many, and when she says 7, Deeds exclaims holy shit, and they begin searching for cats, throwing out one cat after the other, which are all caught by people on the street. Finally, Deeds and the woman jump out, and people cheer. Next, Mac has twisted the whole story, showing how Deeds throws out cats, adding sounds how the cats die and people scream how he's a cat killer. Babe remarks angrily that the truth was a wonderful story, but Mac says he had to spice it up. Babe says Deeds don't deserve this. Deeds exchanges mails with his people at home, who are running his pizza business for him. Playing tennis the next day, Deeds tells Chuck he'd like to stay around a bit longer, and not sell his stocks yet, saying he's found this girl. Chuck gets scared and distracted, getting a ball on his throat, and Cecil laughs. Suddenly, Chuck sees a secret message on a tennis ball for a meeting. In the shower, Chuck sees Marty, asking who he is. Marty tells him that girl Deeds is seeing, who's a school nurse, is not really a school nurse. Next, Chuck meets with Mac. That evening, as Babe and Deeds have had a great day, Babe begins trying to explain that she's really a news producer, but can't manage to reveal it. Deeds gives her a card with a lovely poem, expressing he's in love with her. She gives him a kiss, but tells him she's sorry, which he doesn't understand. As she goes into her apartment, Deeds wishes her a good night and walks home, yelling he loves New York. Next morning, Babe tells Mac she's in love with Deeds, saying she'll tell him everything and say she'll quit. That evening, Deeds has prepared a special surprise for Babe, and asks Emilio to pretend he's Babe, and Deeds practice asking the big question. Emilio says he loves him a lot, and finding it becoming weird, they stop. Suddenly Chuck and Cecil appear, and they wish him the best for his big night. Chuck asks if they're in for any nasty surprises, and Deeds says he doesn't think so since he's done nothing recently. Chuck remarks he wonders what show they put on when they can't report on him, asking a guy, who's Marty, to put on Channel 8. On the news, Mac suddenly reveals the girl who's fallen in love with Deeds is a news producer. Babe appears, seeing it, and calls on Deeds, saying she came to try to explain. Feeling tricked and betrayed, Deeds walks out, and Babe gets sad. Next day, Deeds says he want to go home, and Chuck remarks they have the papers ready, that he can get his $40 billion. Deeds says he doesn't want the money, asking if they know any charity. Cecil names the United Negro College Fund, and Deeds tells them to give the money to them, signing, and then leaves. Chuck gets really happy. A day or two later, the United Negro College Fund manager gets a heart attack. Deeds comes back home to his little town, saddened. The next day, Babe arrives in the town, walking into the pizza business, asking where Deeds is. The woman says she knows her, saying she won't tell where Deeds is until she's managed to get by her. Babe starts attacking her, but is knocked down. The woman remarks she was a rodeo clown for 6 years, and the fight continues. Babe grabs a pizza dough, blinding her, and then runs up, kicking her hard. The woman remarks that was a good kick. Somewhere in the forest, Deeds delivers pizza to a guy the town calls Crazy Eyes. Crazy Eyes tells him not to worry what happened, that time heals all things, except these eyes. Deeds thanks him, but he says he wasn't talking to him, but that squirrel. He adds however that he's sorry about what that Chuck guy did to his uncle's company, tearing it apart and firing all those nice people. Deeds asks where he heard that, and Crazy Eyes says he watches the stock market channel all the time, that Chuck may bullshit everybody else, but not him. Suddenly, Babe goes through the ice, and starts screaming for help. Hearing it, Deeds quickly gets there. First he asks where the cameras are, thinking it's a trick, but as the current takes her down, he gets worried. He kicks a hole in the ice, and Babe grabs his leg to climb up. Soon after, Babe says she's very sorry for everything and that she really loves him. Deeds says he doesn't know who she is and is sorry too. A day or two later, Babe, Emilio, and the elevator operator hear how Chuck has confirmed the company will be sold off piece by piece, and that the only person who could stop it is Mr. Deeds, but who has given up his voting rights, and that now 50,000 people are likely to lose their jobs. Some time later, Chuck is having a shareholder meeting, saying his proposition to sell the company off piece by piece will result in substantial premiums on all their shares, and people cheer. By law, he has to allow any shareholder who's against the proposition to speak. Emilio appears, scaring Chuck, saying the proposition would be an insult to a great man, turning to Chuck and disappears. Then Mr. Deeds appears, and Chuck says he sold all his 300 million shares and is not allowed to speak. Deeds holds up a share he bought that morning, and walks up to speak. Deeds starts a speech, asking people if they really dreamed of becoming savage investors when they were children. He remarks his own dream was to become a fireman, wanting to slide down those wicked poles and help others. He asks a man if he wanted to become a fireman too, and the man says no, but adds that he wanted to be a veterinarian. Deeds asks another man, who says he wanted to be a magician. Suddenly, several people rise, sharing their childhood dream jobs. Cecil says he wanted to be a ping pong champion. Deeds remarks that now they're about to put 50,000 people out of work to make a quick buck, that their 6th grade versions of themselves would put bubblegum into their hair and kick their asses for just thinking of doing what they're about to do. People stand up, agreeing with him. Deeds says there's still hope, asking them to please not break up his uncle's company, using the hammer, saying he always wanted to do that, and people cheer. Chuck then says they won't win, since he owns 49% and then controls an extra 2% from foreign investors, giving him 51% of the voting right. As he's about to vote for his proposition, Babe storms in yelling stop. She runs up to Deeds saying she's sorry, but that she stole Blake's journal from him. She then walks up, explaining that in the journal, Blake wrote on April 12, 1957, that he was a volcano of lust and slept with one of his staff. She shows the audience the Blake media ledger, showing who in his staff worked each day, and on April 12, 1957, there was just one person working on Blake's floor, a woman. Sadly, the woman died giving birth to a son born January 23, 1958. Emilio remarks that's his birthday. Babe adds the woman's name was Miss Consuelo Lopez, and Emilio says that's his mother. Chuck gets scared, and Babe announces that the rightful heir to the $40 billion stocks is Emilio, which can be shown with a simple DNA test, remarking Chuck doesn't own any shares since they weren't Mr. Deeds to give. Chuck says these are all lies, and seemingly teleporting to the podium, Emilio tells Chuck he's fired. Babe talks to Deeds, gives a sincere apology for what she did, and would be willing to spend the rest of her life to beg him for a second chance, since she loves him. Deeds kisses her, saying let's go home. Emilio is firing several people, but allows Cecil to stay. He then thanks Deeds and Babe for their beautiful spirit and research. Deeds says all he wants is his friendship, but then Emilio says, how about $1 billion, and Deeds remarks, alright. Some time later, Deeds is happy since a company bought one of his cards, the one he wrote for Babe, and she's happy for him. All over the nation, people are reading his cards. Somewhere, Crazy Eyes remark he can't believe Deeds bought them all one of these, saying, damn, these things are fast. The end. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this, and hit the like button to help us out. Until next time, take care.